I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm excited to talk about the fourth and final season of Ozark with director Amanda Marsalis. So Amanda, before season 4, you had directed 2 episodes of the series. So what was your reaction when you found out that you were going to have the opportunity to direct 4 episodes and thus almost an entire third of this final season?
Shock, gratitude, excitement, and nausea.
I can absolutely imagine. And I should say, you know, the episodes you directed this season were 8, 9, 12, and 13, which are very intense episodes. And I would like to jump into episode 8, which I just heard is your Emmy episode, or will be your Emmy episode submission. And this episode is quite the peculiar one for multiple reasons, including that it breaks from the show's usual style and pace and has this very unique musical through line. Talk a bit about, you know, how the core concept for this episode came to fruition.
Well, that is Chris Mundy, who's the showrunner and writer of Ozark, is also the writer of this episode. And we always know it's a very unique episode, and I was very grateful he chose me to direct the episode, because when he sent it to me and I read it, you know, you sort of start an episode and you think, and now we're going to switch to another character. Now the structure of the regular, and it didn't, you know, it obviously has a different structure. And it was so beautiful and so special. And then I was just, from then on, nervous, excited, honored that I was the one that was going to be able to bring this episode. And I would just constantly was like, do it justice, do it justice, do it justice. Like it was so well written. And then Nas, like Illmatic, is in the script. Like it is all there on paper. The Chris Mundy's vision is on paper, and it's just my job to help bringing it out.
That's incredible. And, you know, despite the atypical style, I would still say that the success of the episode is contingent upon how it builds on episode 7, which is so intense and, you know, basically the crux of Ruth's season 4 storyline. Did you have access to dailies from episode 7 before you started work?
Yeah.
Okay. Or were you able to sit down with Robin Wright as well? Or, you know, how did you make sure that transition was seamless?
Well, I knew what they had filmed. I'd seen everything they filmed. I was in prep on set too, but also you're watching dailies. Chris and I are speaking, you know, constantly aware of like what's happening before you, what you're going to do, where it's going to go, who you're going to hand it off to. That it's like being a guest director it's also about being a good guest. Like, you know, so you have to be aware of, you know, what's being handed to you and what you're handing off constantly, you know.
Absolutely. And this episode is all about Ruth, you know, grief-stricken and vengeful, being on this mission after yet another member of her family is taken away from her. And poor Ruth, I know, she's always put through the ringer on this show. And obviously that's why Julia Garner has done a ton of emotion-laden work on this show, but I do feel like the emotions in this episode are quite elevated. So were you able to sit down with Julia to flesh out the emotional beats of this episode ahead of production? Or how did you ensure that your ideas about this episode aligned?
We started, the second I started prep, we started talking about it, because we all understood the weight and the value of the episode. So it wasn't something we were going to start talking about in rehearsal on set. We treated it as much as I could like a film, as much as I could pre-do everything. That's what we did, and it was great because Julie and I, obviously having worked together before, having become friends, knowing each other, we hadn't, you know, we just started. She would just be over at my house on the weekends, and we would just, you know, or if she wasn't on set, you know, we would just be working, making sure we were going to get there, you know.
Absolutely. And you know, what I really like about this episode is that it's basically a deep dive into Ruth's psyche, and we have everything from hallucinations to visions. So talk about, you know, working on those and what was important to you when you were, you know, presenting those, and how those are stylistically dissimilar to some of the rest of the episode.
It was just about like, I would say, you wanted them to feel real for the second that they happened. So the audience actually thought like, oh my God, she killed Hobby. And then you're like, oh, you know, I actually got to see episode 8 in theater at the premiere of with the live audience, and it was amazing. You know, it was all the cast and crew and all these wonderful people who had come, and we saw it was in New York at the Paris Theater. And the reactions, like the reaction when she shot Javi in her fantasy, and then the reaction when everyone realized it was a fantasy, was so heartbreaking and strong, and people were mad, and it was really wonderful to be in an audience and experience it with other people, because I was like, oh yeah, that's what we were going for.
Yeah, it must have been very gratifying, right, to see that it really landed. But that's perfect segue into my next question, because straight away in your first season 4 episode, you then get to kill off an important character, Javi, which you do from a very interesting angle, from a distance through the glass front of Claire Shaw's office in a, mostly static take. What went into the decision to shoot the scene that way?
I think because the entire episode is a buildup to killing him, and you fake out, she tries to kill him in the middle of the road, she fantasizes about killing him. You have this huge emotional, really well written, really well performed scene of everyone talking in that room ahead of time. There wasn't any more of that was going to happen. Like, she was either going to kill Javi or not kill him. And just the way that the location worked, I was a photographer before I was a director, so I have very visual, basically. And it just spoke to me, like, we're just going to come in and it's just going to all play out right here. And thankfully, the actor who plays Javi, who is so extraordinary, is very good at being shot, because that shot wouldn't have worked if he didn't believably look like he was being shot and hitting the ground, so it's also great. Somebody turned it into a GIF. It's one of my favorite things that ever happened.
Oh, that's really great. That's really interesting to hear. And after it happens, we get this intense exchange between exchange of looks between Ruth and Marty and Wendy. To what extent was that exchange scripted, and what did you intend to capture with it?
I mean, it was because you want to feel that. Did Ruth cross a line, and is she going to actually just keep crossing lines? Like, is she just going to kill Marty and Wendy? Like, has she lost the plot totally, or is she going to pull herself back? And it's that little tension of exchange, and then she's out of there. And then you have that beautiful her ride down in the elevator and out onto the car, and just losing her.
I absolutely love that we get to see the immediate aftermath of that scene. As you said, with Ruth getting into the elevator and then walking through the lobby of Shaw Medicals, and then, getting into her car in the garage and basically breaking down a bit. And then we get this, I don't think it's a flashback, it's probably more of a vision where she hears like the water and she's sitting on the roof. I thought that was just such a great bookend to the episode.
And yeah, it was we just wanted to, it's like, she deserves peace. You just want to think that she made it there.
She really does deserve it, and that makes her ultimate fate even more heartbreaking. It's very true. From there, I would like to jump to episode 12, which gives us the 50 Shades of Wendy Bird that we always love to see. Especially in that scene on the courthouse steps between herself and her father. Talk a bit about creating the composition of that scene, the imagery of Wendy kneeling down before her father, which I found quite haunting.
It's Laura Linney is the most extraordinary actor. She's so incredibly talented, but she's equally as generous and present for everyone else on set. I learned an incredible amount from her. I continue to learn from her. She continues to be like a generous presence in my life. I'm a better director because I've worked with her, and because she has been kind to me, and helpful, and has taught me things. She'll go, "Can I tell you something?" And I'll be like, "Absolutely, Laura Linney, please." And she would give me some advice, something or other, and it helped me. It would help me. I would be better because of it. So side note, but that scene, again, those courthouse steps had those steps. That's our courthouse. It just feels like that's where that's going to happen. And get there with the actors, and it just makes sense, and it just is like, it comes together. It's kismet in some way. And Laura, I mean, her breakdown just was hard. I mean, it was hard to watch, because you feel as a director, you're actually causing your actors pain when they're that good at their job. You know, you have to go home at night being like, I'm a horrible person. I'm just out here torturing people, you know?
Oh boy. I mean, I think it goes without saying, right, that both Laura Linney and Richard Thomas just execute that scene meticulously, and it is fascinating to watch and rewatch as well.
Yeah.
And you know, there's no shortage of shocking moments on Ozark, but I don't think anything shocked me as much as Wendy then banging her head to the side against the window, and then letting the blood just, you know, run down her forehead as she kind of stares into oblivion. I'm so curious
Yeah.
about the conversations you had, you know, with Laura while preparing this scene, and what the two of you wanted to get across with it.
I mean, it is that Laura's making a decision. She's making decisions about where she's gonna have to go to get what she wants, right? How extreme she's gonna have to get. But then also that scene, you realize, mirrors Ben hitting his head on the window in the car with, you know, so there's this connection, this bridge between them there. And then there's also just a lot of technical scenes about how to shoot that and not hurt anybody, and what to do, and, you know, how we're going to make it look real but not actually have Laura Linney smash her head against the glass, you know.
And what did that process entail?
Oh, it's like meetings with stunts, meeting with special effects. Like, we're going to take this glass off, we're going to put this here, maybe this will work, you know, talking about what angle do I want to shoot it at, how, you know, do I want, you know, all the different choices of like, what are the options, and if you do this, can this be here to be safe, can this happen there, is this, you know, it's I mean, it's one of my favorite parts about directing is how mathy it is, and how many emotional decisions in directing get made in a sciencey, mathy way, and then you've like created a structure around the emotions, and then the emotions get to do whatever they need to do within the structure.
That's a very interesting explanation. I've never heard it that way. Thank you.
Yeah.
And, you know, before we slowly wrap things up, there is one moment I still want to point out, and that is the thrill ride of the last 10-something minutes of episode 13. You know, it's shot in pouring rain. There are all these amazing color contrasts. And then, you know, it ends with a bang, literally and figuratively. So how much fun was it to work on and create the intensity of that sequence?
It was so much fun. I tell my mom, I'm like, you know, Mom, when you see people out night, like if you see a TV show and people are outside and it's nighttime, they filmed that at 3 a.m. Like, all those people were at work at 3 a.m. standing in the rain, just so you know, you know. So you read a script like that and you think, oh, this is amazing, and then you think, I'm going to be outside soaking wet with the rest of the crew for nights on end, right? Like, technically we have a lot of like difficult work ahead of us, but because it is so well written, it is so worth it. You would do anything for Ozark. You're like, it just, because it does, the second it starts raining, that episode is just cooking, and it like heated towards the end of that buildup, and it's just, you know, it's fun, it's good, you know. So you're like, okay, cool, let's put on our rain jackets, everybody, here we go, you know.
Yeah, and I really think at the end of the episode, you really get that sense of, oh, okay, we're heading towards the finale now. This is, you know, we're heading towards the end. I think you really feel the tension there. And it was, again, such a thrill to watch. And, you know, before we wrap things up, is there any episode or any scene or any actor you worked with in this season that we have not talked about, but that you would like to highlight?
I mean, I just love them all. But I've killed some really great people on Ozark, you know. I killed a lot of people at the end of season 2, you know.
Oh, yes.
You know, that was like a, you know, so, and we always joke we kill all the best actors, you know. And it was, especially as the season was coming to an end, it was hard to say, it's hard to say goodbye to everybody. I'm on another show now. It's wonderful. It's a show called Kindred. We're doing it for FX.
Oh, nice.
I have a great showrunner here, Brandon Jacob Jenkins. But I also our Ozark family was a really strong family. Like, the thing I think I'd want to say too is, like, I miss our crew. We had an extraordinary crew, you know. We had like the things that we do with camera and light on that show, like, you know, it was really fun to work with so many people who were so good. Liam, our first AC, our focus puller, like things that we could pull off because Liam could do it. Like, sometimes you go some other place and you're like, I have an idea, and then you can't do it again. It's like technical, it's mathy. But if somebody doesn't have those technical or mathy skills, I can't get the emotion I want as a director. So Ozark was really full of a bunch of incredibly talented people, like all the way down the call sheet, you know, so I miss them.
Oh. And, you know, that's a perfect segue actually into my final question, because I know you didn't direct the series finale, but you spent a lot of time with this crew, with these characters, and were part of guiding these characters to their narrative destination. So what was your reaction when you learned about Ruth's fate and just what note the show was going to end on?
I read the script really early on and knew what was going to happen, and I cried when I read it. And I also thought it was the best ending Ozark could have, because me personally believe that the sort of story of Ozark and thinking about the United States and thinking about poor people in America and rich people in America and who gets away with what and what, you know, who gets the short end of the stick, and of course the Birds are going to get away with everything, and of course Ruth is going to pay. And it was so hard to read. I really was, and I wandered around. I remember it so visually. I was in New York on another show, and I wandered the streets of Brooklyn, like upset, and I couldn't tell anyone why I was upset. I couldn't tell a soul what I knew, and I just was like devastated, but also, you know, it's like when you break up with somebody that you're in love with, but you're like, we're not right for each other. It's like that feeling.
Oh, that's a really interesting way to put it. It's certainly a tragic finale, but it's also a very fitting finale, especially, you know, for Ruth. I mean, obviously everyone's very sad, but I think it's, you know, and the way she exits, I think, is absolutely perfect. So, well, you know, congratulations on this show and on this final season. It was an incredible one, Amanda, and thank you so much for speaking to us today. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for talking to me. I really appreciate it. I'll talk Ozark anytime. I'll talk shop anytime. You know,
That's
I love this.
I love it so much.